Hi guys, welcome to the SME Guru and Agentify podcast. I wanted to talk to you today about something that's a very, very interesting discussion, and it's basically why Indians are great at buying real estate, why Indians are great at real estate investing. Now, I'm of Indian descent. I'm born in Australia. I've lived in the US, I've lived in the UK, I've spent an extensive amount of time in India and in Canada. So I have a little bit of an idea of, I guess, a better idea of how Indians or people from an Indian background are formidable real estate investors and holders of real estate outside of India more than in India. But I hope that the people on this thread can give us some insights and give us what they think. So the first thing I want to say is a lot of people in Western countries are aware of Chinese property buyers. Certainly in parts of the Western world, the Chinese have large tranches of real estate and are seen as a powerful force. I want to tell you that the whole world needs to stop, watch, and listen up to what I'm saying. The Indians are coming. The Indians, 1.4 billion of them, also love real estate, also have the financial capacity like the Chinese. They've got a roaring economy and a desire to buy the best in the world. So I can tell you that for those of you that are familiar with the Chinese and what's happened in mass migration, you're already seeing it in pockets of the Western world. The Indians are coming in just as hard and just as fast with a lot of force. So this video is aimed at people that are selling to Indian buyers, that are interested in real estate. I really want to talk to you and explain to you a couple of reasons why. The three reasons why Indians make great real estate investors. The first one is scarcity, okay? When you're a small country in landmass and you have 1.4 billion people, it makes scarcity a very real problem. People are used to growing up sharing apartments, many people staying in a house, in a room, little to no privacy in many instances, even in the middle class. And people have grown up in this environment where space is at a premium. Now, when space is at a premium and you find yourself at some point in your life living in another country and space is a little bit more free, a little bit more open, a little bit cheaper, in relative terms, then you're obviously going to be highly motivated to get your patch of land as soon as you can. And you see that with new migrants. As soon as they move to the country, as soon as they get that full-time job, they'll travel very far away and they want to have their patch of land. Doesn't matter. It's a 1-hour commute to work, an hour and a half. They've got their picket fence, the double-story house. That makes them happy. It's something, it's a part of the dream for migrants. So scarcity is a big driver for the motivation for Indians to buy real estate and the amount that they invest in real estate. Now, let's be really honest about this, right? The Earth we're not going to get any more land. Until Elon Musk lands on Mars and colonizes it, we're not going to be able to live anywhere else. So land is not increasing, but population is. So there is a scarcity factor just in real estate alone. And people that come from very, very highly populated places, China, India, Indonesia, and elsewhere in the world, understand that land is of a premium value and it's to be bought and invested and held within families for generations if you can. So scarcity is the number one thing. Number two, it's something in Hindi called jugaad. It's spelled Jugaad. The Google definition is a flexible approach to problem solving that uses limited resources in an innovative way. In colloquial terms, I would say in English, what we would generally call is, it's street smart. Jugaad is the translation of street smart in English. The Jews have another word for it, which is similar but different, but that's chutzpah, which is also this idea of having both innovation, some street smarts, working with limited resources, having the confidence or the balls to make decisions. So it's taking risk. It's all kind of mixed up in there. It's hard to put a solid definition around it. But the reason that it's relative to this discussion is that, you will see Indian taxi drivers, 7-Eleven owners, whatever they're doing, trying to get onto the real estate ladder. And obviously you've got to be innovative for that. So they might share with multiple family members or friends from the same community. They might move further away. They will move to, all parts of the world in order to get their patch of land and to set up their life and to have their family. So you need this creativity, you need this innovation, and Indians have it, not all of them, but certainly some of them have it inbred because they learn it growing up. Again, the mean streets of Mumbai, the difficult streets of Delhi. When you're growing up, there's not enough to go around, or someone's trying to take advantage of you, or there's a massive population, and just as simple as crossing the road is a difficult thing to do. Well, you become pretty street smart pretty quick. And if you're taking some of those risks when you're really young and you're seeing opportunity, because there's a lack of opportunity around you. I mean, this is the thing that I think people don't necessarily understand about some of these countries. One of the reasons that people migrate out is that there is very little opportunity, either for education or for work after education. It's such a competitive environment that it forces you to be innovative and I guess to come up with things that will work in an environment that is, different. So someone moving to the other side of the world, India to the UK, for example, they have different problems. I'm not saying that they necessarily find everything easy, but this is one of the reasons that when they do get a hold of something, they start that small business, they start that full-time job. Real estate is the next thing that they want to get into. And, the third and final one that I wanted to talk about here today was saving, right? So why do Indians generally as a population succeed pretty well in real estate? Well, saving, having the frugality to come up with the deposit and to buy something that is within their affordability makes them a very, very powerful force when it comes to real estate. So what does that mean? That means that, they may be frugal when they go out with their family. They may cook at home a lot, no fancy cars, fancy watches, fancy phones. They will save in the idea that they will take that sacrifice that they're making in order to go and purchase something down the line for a long-term gain. And that's something that you see in a lot of communities. There's no secrets around saving. Anyone that saves will have a larger deposit and can put that money to use later on in their life. And there are plenty of financial podcasts and budget managers that give pretty good advice on how to save and save well. But there are some Indians that have a reputation for being, I will say, extremely good savers, right? They're very good at saving. And that reputation comes for a reason. It's because they, again, brought up in that scarce environment, taking a leap of faith to another country, leaving family behind. Financial success, being financially prudent is a very, very important part of what success means to Indian migrants. So these are the three things I wanted to talk to you about. Scarcity. Number one, there's just not enough land to go around. People have to get onto the real estate ladder. So while we're out here thinking about the market's going to go down, you've got to think about every migrant that's coming here or every person that's been here for a couple of years that has a job, that has been saving, that is making those sacrifices. They're just trying to get onto the ladder. They're not really complaining about prices, and they're driving a lot of the growth in a lot of the places that we're seeing. So understand that. Number two, jugaad or street smart. You've got to be innovative. What does that mean? What does that mean in real estate terms? Look, it means if you can buy something that's, someone started to build a house, it was an owner builder, they ran out of money, and now the house is half complete. But it's the cheapest house on the street, and even once you complete the renovations, you'll have bought it cheaper than anything else on the street. That's value. You go in, you buy it. You say, well, we're going to sleep in half of the house while the other house gets done, or we're going to buy 2 duplexes, rent out 1 duplex to offset income and do another one. What else can it mean? It can mean sharing with other students or family members or community members in order to save, in order to buy something together, in order to have a patch to call your own. So you go and buy a big block, you're actually paying less dollars per square meter for that land, but if you've got an arrangement already between the two of you as to splitting it up, well, there's profitability there. It may be doing work with each other. So I mentioned renovation work. Certain communities in India are very good at physical building construction, so they can actually do the work themselves. When you see rising construction costs, well, if you understand construction, if you know what to do, your costs haven't gone up, but the value of property continues to rise. So having that ability to understand, okay, I'm going to take this risk, but I know I can save on this side of the business or of the real estate investment, I think is a very pivotal part to the way that a lot of Indians invest. Number 3 is the savings. This is always an interesting one. You know, you see there's plenty of people that have become notorious on 60 Minutes and certain TV shows telling young people not to buy their avocado and toast or their 4 coffees a day. However you do it, and whichever way you do it, it is something that really does help and aid in purchasing real estate long term. And don't forget, real estate's a long-term asset. So if you're investing, let's say, for example, $200,000 into a property instead of $100,000, you're buying a better property. You're going to get longer-term growth from it. Your yield, year on year, will be better than that cheaper asset that you might have bought with $100,000. So the saving not only allows you to buy real estate, but it allows you to buy better real estate, because obviously banks have some conditions around lending. If it's residential, somewhere around the 80%, and if it's commercial, somewhere around 65%. So when the banks are looking at these assets, they do recognize this person saved quite a bit. This is a risk that we can take, as opposed to someone who has less savings and might be looking for something that really is not possible in that particular area. So, if someone has $100,000, for example, and they're looking to buy a residential place in Sydney or a commercial place in Sydney, there's very, very few options for you. Very few. Now, if you have $200,000, which means you're buying somewhere at an 80% land in the $1 million range, many more options. So saving not only helps you in terms of a long-term debt position, but it helps you in terms of buying better assets. And obviously better assets have a higher capital gain, which helps you, with your long-term position. So these are the reasons, guys. What I do want to say, and I think this is very important to be said here, there are a lot of migrant communities that are good at buying real estate. I mentioned the Chinese, I mentioned Jewish community with chutzpah. I'd be very interested to hear from you guys, in your experience, what other communities are doing really well on the real estate ladder? Who should we look out for? Who's going to be, the people to watch? And what can we do in the real estate world to, I guess, be open to these types of new migrants and new communities and welcoming them and, I guess, getting them into real estate, because they have a deep desire to do it for the reasons I've mentioned. They've got a deep passion, made many sacrifices, really working their butts off, right? I mean, one of the things I haven't mentioned is the hard work ethic that Indians have. And you will see them. They're riding Deliveroo bikes. They are, working at the back of kitchens. They're pulling the extra shift at Woolies. They are doing anything and everything in order to get that money, because they have dreams, ambitions, goals that is all built up around building a life in a new place, or some of them might even be sending money back home to India. So it's a very, very interesting, I guess, melting pot we're seeing around the world at the moment. And it is driving up prices in a way, not just because of migrants. There's obviously a lot of inflation and other things happening. But I think it's very important to actually look and learn from these communities, right? I traveled to Israel to see how the Jewish people did business. How do they run their businesses? They have a great reputation around it. I've been to China. I've been to factories in China. I've been to the Middle East. I've lived in the US, as I said. There is a lot to be learnt from different communities, and the world is a big place. And I know that in the past, we have, as I said, learnt a lot from, for example, the Chinese community in terms of buying property. I'll never forget, I had a friend who we were talking about, and he was a Chinese guy. And I said to him, this guy, he paid $2 million extra for this property. It was at an auction, and he just kept sticking his hand up. What is it? I don't understand it. People really had stopped bidding, and it was just two Chinese people fighting it out at the auction. And he said to me very simply, he just said, look, Chinese people are not buying property for them. They're not even buying it for their kids. They're buying it for 100 years. It's an asset forever to be passed down. It's an asset to never be sold if they can have their way. And I thought, wow, that's a massive idea I had never really thought of. Here was everyone else kind of doing the maths. Can I pay for this? What if I lose my job? What will the bank give me? But the next door one sold for this much less. And when will the price catch up? And the current affair says that the prices are about to come down. And here's another community with a totally different view, with a long-term view. And those of you in business know that thinking long-term generally will set you up better for your business and planning and strategy than anything else. So these guys are thinking that far ahead, and we're still thinking about this year's market, last year's market, next year's market, right? So embracing some of these ideas, I think, can really help. It is not to be feared. It is to be, I think, welcomed and applauded. And I'm not saying that every Indian is like this. I'm not saying that any community is exactly the same, but these are traits that I've noticed, and I wanted to share them with some of you because I do often get asked, being of an Indian background, I have had a lot of agents, investors come to me and say, well, what we're noticing is there's a lot more people from the Indian community that are ready to buy. They've got their savings in check, they've done their research, and they're out there. They're out there either every weekend or if it's commercial. They're making offers. They're at the auctions. They're sticking their hands up. They're ready to buy. They're looking to buy. They're eager. They're hungry for property. They're hungry for land. And what is it, Sanjay? Where's this coming from? How much of this will there be in the future? My message to you guys, there'll be a lot more of this in the future. And just like we saw the Chinese wave of migration and real estate, we're going to see an Indian wave, and it's coming, and it's as strong as the Chinese one. And for certain pockets, I'm not sure that there's going to be much of a change in regional areas with some of these migrants, but for certain pockets right around the world, it will mean a lot more competition in buying real estate and a need to be a lot more savvy when you're weighing up your real estate investments.